Hi everyone, I'm here to introduce our next activity on the spheres of the Earth, which is going to be a group project. But before we get started, there are a couple of videos for you to check out in the Schoology assignment for this week, and they will really give you some background information of what the spheres of the Earth are. Generally, we're studying the spheres of the Earth at the beginning of the year because it highlights the content for the rest of the year. So Earth is a complex planet, and we will focus on Earth science this year. If we think about the components of the Earth, we can simply break them into the living and the non-living. The non-living parts of the Earth are broken into three different spheres: gases, which would be the atmosphere; liquid, water, which would be the hydrosphere; and all of the other solid rocks, minerals, heavy metals, components of the crust in the interior of the Earth, which would be the geosphere. And then the living components of the Earth are a part of the biosphere. And all of these spheres interact with each other, and these connections can be complex or simplistic, but they are constantly working together to create our unique planet. Alright, so a little bit of information on the project. You and your group members are going to complete a slide for a sphere that you are assigned to. So the first couple of slides, the geosphere, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and the biosphere, these are blank because these are the slides that you and your group members are going to create your presentation on. There are three parts to this project. You need to have a title and a definition of the sphere. It does not have to be a lengthy definition, but it should be complete and give your audience a good idea of what the sphere is. The whole slide is going to be basically a collage of descriptive words and images, and you'll need at least 5 images and 5 words. And lastly, part 3, you need to make at least one connection between your sphere and another sphere. So a connection between the atmosphere and the hydrosphere, or a connection between the biosphere and the geosphere. Make a connection and give your example. Make sure your group's names are in the notes section at the bottom of the slide. Here are some helpful links to get you started on your research for finding information out about your sphere. I have a link for each of the spheres, as well as a couple of links that will help you determine some connections between spheres. The rubric, so it is a 15-point project. You need to make sure that you have a title, definition, at least 5 images, at least 5 words, and a thoughtful connection that's made between at least 2 spheres. So your sphere and one other at least. Oftentimes, when you start talking about one connection, you can bring in a few other spheres as well, because the whole system is interacting as one. Here is a teacher example of the cryosphere. And so for this, we see that we have different images overlapping in somewhat of a collage style. There are descriptive words that tell me about the cryosphere, and basically I get a good idea of what the cryosphere is just from glancing at this slide. Now, the cryosphere is sometimes considered one of the major spheres and sometimes not. It is basically the frozen part of the hydrosphere, so all of the frozen or solid form ice on a planet. That's your cryosphere. The connection that I made was between the cryosphere and the atmosphere. Carbon that's stored in ice over the years is released when that ice melts. So any atmospheric carbon that was in the air at the time that the water froze becomes stored, and this occurs over millions and millions of years, but then as that ice melts, all this carbon is released, increasing the carbon content in the atmosphere. And you could also pull in the hydrosphere into that interaction as well if you want to take it a step further and explain that you know, sea levels are rising because of the melting of the ice as well. That is it for my description of this project. Remember, you're going to be working in groups. You'll need to share this slide. It's going to be the same slide used through the whole class. And then we'll regroup later and we will use your classmates' slides to talk about each sphere with a little bit more detail. All right, please reach out with any questions.